In today's episode, we explore the vegan recipes of Suzy Gonzalez, the creator of Xicana Vegan. We also take a peek into their portraits and meticulous way of making art with depth and meaning, as well as their contributions to awesome ebook fundraisers like Flavors of Freedom, 28 vegan recipes for Palestine, and 100% of those profits are donated to Palestine Children's Relief Fund and Sulala Animal Rescue. So enjoy this episode and enjoy decolonizing your diet. Hello, and thank you for joining us here at Finding the Healer Within. Today we're here with Suzy Gonzalez of Xicana Vegan. They are an artist, writer, and organizer based in San Antonio. She has had solo exhibitions nationwide, as well as being the writing lead at Veggie Mijas, and was a mentor for the NYFA Immigrant Artist Mentoring Program. Thanks for joining us today, Suzy. And just to dive on in, with your vegan zines and things like that, how did you get into that? Like, what can you give us a little bit of insight as to like what your background is and how you kind of got into that world?
Yeah, thank you so much, Adriana, for having me. Yeah, it's a long story, I guess. I'll try to keep it short, but just like how I got into zines in general, in college at Texas State, my friend Elle and I started a feminist zine called Yes Ma'am, and from there, it kind of sparked. We did that zine for like 10 years, and then I had started doing Xicana Vegan zine, wanting to create. I think a lot of the times we create things as artists, as creators, as writers, because we see a gap, right? Like something doesn't exist and I have to do it. Someone's got to do it.
Right.
And also you have a passion for it and you want to like grow and build community and like find your people that are also like into that, somehow niche thing. So I started the zine, and I love doing it. I'm also a part of organizing the San Antonio Zine Fest. So that's another way that we kind of like to bring zinesters and self-publishers together. But for me, it's a way that I practice embracing like cultura, while practicing like nonviolence, getting to create recipes, getting to work with like my mom and my sister with recipes. My sister's vegetarian, my mom is a vegan too. And just like, being really into plants and, loving animals at the same time.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really great. And I think that's kind of what the commonality that a friend of mine found with you when my friend Mango, shout out to Mango, they went to the Orange Show for a show and they saw your zines there and they showed them to me. And I remember looking at it and I was like, oh my God, this is what I've been looking for. Because like I used to go to Austin to this vegan restaurant that served Mexican food. I think it was called Mr. Healthy, or I forget what it was
Mr.
called.
Natural.
Mr. Natural,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and then I tried some of their vegan menudo and I was like, "Oh my God, this is awesome." Like, but what prompted that? Like what, just you being vegan or your family being vegan?
Yeah, so I've been vegan now like 11 years. So it's been a minute. My first, coming into that for me was in college, reading the work of Carol J. Adams. And so what she does is like a feminist vegetarian critical theory, is like what she calls it. So as I was like, you know, learning about feminism, learning like for me about like also like Chicanismo, learning about reproductive rights, finding out that I, was an activist artist, right? And like figuring out what that meant for me, like as a young creative, I was reading a lot of feminist theory, and seeing how I could make things, visuals based on that. And, once I kind of started reading this literature, I was like, I can't not,
Right?
make this change. And so I did like a New Year's resolution and I was like, okay, I'm waiting until January and that's when it's going to happen. And, and I've never turned back and I haven't needed to. I think a lot of times folks think it's going to be very limiting, but for me, it has opened a world up to, not just things I eat, but also like practicing herbalism and practicing like spiritual medicine and all of these, plant foods that we never would have maybe even thought of eating or experimenting with. Because I think a lot of the times we just eat the same few, like, vegetables or something, and maybe we
Yeah.
don't expand or see what else is out there. But there's so much to play with. And It doesn't always have to be like weird, meat substitutes or expensive this or that. Like rice and beans por vida, like
Yes,
so so there's
definitely.
ways, right, to do it too where it doesn't break the bank too.
No, it's true. And even I found like going to Indian restaurants here in Houston, a friend of mine, there's like a district where they have, a concentration of these restaurants. And I've gone there to these buffets and it's all like, I believe it's vegetarian, but it's so delicious and flavorful and there's no meat in there. But it's
Mhm.
filling, you see people that are chunky there. You don't lose, there's a lot of common misconceptions with veganism, like you're gonna die, you're gonna lose all your vitamins or whatever. And I'm
Yeah,
sure it does take some concentration and like making sure that you're getting the right nutrients. But at the end of the day, really, that's what we're trying to do with food anyway. So might
yeah.
as well do it with food that's gonna replenish us and clean us out. But in the process of you doing that with your mother and your sister, did you want to make like a zine of Chicana vegan food that kind of changes the flavor of the food, or did you want to like work on keeping that same flavor but with different spices and vegetables and things like that?
Yeah, I think a lot of the time my idea is to veganize like the foods we grew up eating, right? So like my mom's like rice and beans have always just been vegan, they just are, right? Like
Right.
but like I've made like carne guisada, like with seitan, like the same exact recipe. I'm like, "Mom, tell me how you made it when we were kids. I'm just going to replace the meat with seitan." And the rest of it is the same exact recipe, So like how can we make it the way that, I think people sometimes are concerned that they're not going to be able to have those same foods, right? In our culture, right? But you can. It's totally possible and doable. And I know we grew up with a lot of like ground beef or like fajitas or this and
Yeah.
that. There's like so many yummy goody like stuff like that exists now. Of course, there's like all the Beyond Beef stuff that is like super accessible now, which is like cool if you want to go that route. There's definitely that route. But then there's also like if you want to go like whole foods plant based, there's like mushrooms, there's jackfruit, there's like all kinds of beans and nuts and things that can also replicate like those kinds of meaty textures if you're looking for that kind of thing. So, and you're going to be getting all these like nutrients by eating those things too. So yeah, I'm fully about it. And like I'm also like always like happy to be like a resource. Like I think that's what I want the zine to be too, is like somewhere where folks can turn to find these things. And I think oftentimes, at a zine fest, they're like, where are the recipes? Where are the recipes? I want, like just needing somewhere to turn to for that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. Because I've scattered here and there, like a few friends. I've heard them, want those kinds of recipes of like, oh, I wish I had like a vegan recipe for tamales or this and that and the other. And that's the greatest thing about our food. It's very versatile. Not only with meat but without it as well. I mean, I've seen people use jackfruit and I've tasted it and it tastes like just like pork, or like it tricks me into thinking it tastes like that with any spices and stuff like that. But what were your motives behind becoming a vegan? Just like your study of the world and becoming or realizing that you're an activist artist kind of thing, or
Yeah, well, first it was that realizing that like animals, like specifically female animals, are the ones that are majority are eaten mostly, and then the exploitation like of the dairy industry is an exploitation of like their reproductive systems, and so I kind of equated that with like especially in Texas and right other like very conservative states where we see like our reproductive rights constantly being compromised. And so it was like something clicked where it was like, that's not okay for us. That's not okay for these animals, and that they're bred specifically to be impregnated for their babies to be, stolen, for their reproductive systems to be exploited for the sake of dairy and eggs, right? And so that was like, well, dang, so that was
yeah,
huge for me. So it became this like gender, like women's rights conversation and animal rights. And so there's like these like feminist reasons. But then, as I've grown in my understanding, as I've grown like as a person, it's definitely expanded as like why I do what to do this, or like why I am this. And a lot of it now is like my a love for plants and a love for, you know, Madre Tierra, and like everything else is there too, and like in our environment, and the way that like the environment is benefited from eating more plants, and a love for gardening and like all these things. And so, you know, I know sometimes the conversation of animal rights isn't always something people want to talk about. I can't watch those films, like my heart breaks, you know, like
Yes.
I can't, you
Yeah.
know. And so like sometimes that's what it takes for folks to like transition. And like I did in my early, you know, vegan days, like I, you know, watched a couple of them and it's like, okay, I get it.
You're like,
But
that's enough for me. I'm switching. There's no problem.
there's this like a concept of like decolonizing diet, which
Yes.
was huge for me. And it was the first time that I really saw a connection of like Mexican culture tied to vegetarianism. And so it's always like for me been reading books and like being a book nerd, and being like, that's how my mind has opened. And so like always, you know, pro reading and, you know, grabbing quotes and being inspired. And this book by Luz Calvo and Catriona Rueda Esquivel. They're based in the Bay Area, and they're partners, and they wrote this book. They started with a manifesto, but it's all about this idea that our Mesoamerican ancestors ate majority plant-based foods and like very little meat foods, and those kinds of the animal foods and the foods that are, you know, based in like eating flour, or, you know, this idea of like a flour tortilla versus a corn tortilla, all those things were brought like by Spaniards, by European, you know, colonizers. And before that, it was, you know, a lot of the, you know, like Three Sisters, corns, beans, squash, also like chiles, nopales, like all these things that we love and still eat today, but
Mhm.
maybe not as much as like we could, right? Like for our nutrition and medicine. So I
Yeah.
really try to live by that.
Definitely. I definitely agree with that, especially with nopales just in and of themselves. Like they're just so delicious. Like, and one of my exes gave me a piece of nopal, and my mom was growing it, and now it's like the size of half of our backyard, you know.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah, so if anybody ever needs nopales, I got you,
I
you
got you.
know. But yeah, it's definitely something that's a staple within our own culture. Me being
Oh.
Mexican myself, are you also Mexican? Like, what are your roots?
Yeah, I was born here. I was actually born in Austin. My parents
Hmm.
come from South Texas, from Alice and Kingsville. So I was born in Austin. I grew up like in the burbs north of Houston, and then I went off to college at Texas State, and then I moved to San Antonio in 2012, and went off to grad school in Rhode Island, and then came, and so I've been in San Antonio ever since. Yeah, here in Yanaguana. Right. So
Oh,
I'm just
is
like
that what it was
full.
called before? Before it was named San Antonio?
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah.
Oh.
So I'm like fully Tejana, Tejanex, like I embrace that, you know, like try to wear that with pride, but like Chicanx, Chicana, you know, if we're putting our terms to it.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Because we've been, I mean, like you say, our ancestors have been here for many, many years, and I'm sure that just us traveling, as normal people in modern day, I'm sure our ancestors did the same thing. They were up and down, the what is now the United States, Texas, Arizona, and California, and all that. I know my family was, back and forth doing, harvesting, farming, and doing all that. But definitely, like you said, gardening is something that I've seen that most of our culture enjoys. Like my mother has been an avid, gardener for many, many years, ever since before I was born. My grandmother as well. And is that something that you've cultivated within your own personal life? Just kind of taking in that learning from your roots and applying it to your own life. Just having plants around just to keep you company.
Yeah, for sure. So like both of my grandparents, like my both of my grandpas had, you know, were like had ranches, or like had animals, or like, you know, used their hands a lot, and like or like lived like vaquero life. And you know, like, so I think, and you know, they're off in the spirit world, but like my mom and my sister and I are like really avid gardeners, and like whether it's house plants or like growing food, or we're always like texting and talking about plants and stuff. And so I think we're really trying to regain and remember like these ways and of growing food and growing, like trying to not kill house plants and like all these things,
Right.
right? It's like, we can get as many lessons as we can from our elders while they're here with us, right? But like once they've kind of moved on, it's about like remembering, and like, when we get our hands on that soil, there's like another kind of remembering happening where it's like we're
Yes.
just kind of moving, going with this, with the movements of this like muscle memory. And so, you kind of feel it. You do for sure, like in the growing and the harvest and all the steps that it takes. So it's really something special. So yeah, we love to do it. And yeah.
So is that like a way for you to bond with your sister and your mom, like just kind of to keep you guys together and as strong as ever, you know?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, for sure, absolutely. And like, when it's the holidays and getting together and cooking, like we love that stuff.
That's awesome. And also, Mango that you met at the Orange Show, or they showed me the zines that you make, and they're so nice because it's not just recipes that I saw in there. There's like different stories about the history of certain things, and I thought that was so perfect. Like it just kind of makes it kind of elevates it to a different level because it's not just a recipe, but like there's also things to be learned about history in there, and that's just something that I love history, so it's something that really resonates with me. But why did you pick like a zine, like to make it a zine? Like, why not make it a full published book or anything like that?
Yeah, so I'm a visual artist too, and so like for me, like I have this way of getting things out, right? I think like as creative people, whatever, like we have things we need to say, we have perspective, we have things we need to like get out of our systems and express, right? So for me, one way to do it is like visually, and another way to do it is like with words and writing, and I think I need both of those things to kind of balance out my system, right?
Yeah,
And so there's a beautiful thing about zines that you don't need anyone's permission to do it. You don't need a publisher, you don't need an institution, you don't need this like idea of like gatekeeping, someone that allows you into the door, right? Of like you made it, you're an author. Like no, I can tell myself that I'm not, whenever I
yes,
want. And like that's empowering, that's anti-capitalist, that's like all these beautiful things that just is, right? Like I have a printer, I have, and I have in design, but also like back in the day, we just used to cut stuff up and copy it
right,
at school, maybe use a
yeah.
unattended copy machine and have at it, right? And so there's it's an awesome, accessible, affordable medium, and so I love that about it, and that it's really made a comeback, like in the arts, in libraries, even in like classrooms. This last, I don't know, decade, right? So it's really cool to see that.
Yeah, and it's interesting to like I was looking into like the history of zines just to see how far back it goes, and according to Google, it was saying that it goes back to the 1930s, but I'm sure it goes back even further than that. And like you say, it's a way of getting the information out there without having somebody restricting your ideas and creativity, and just making sure that everything you want on that paper is there, no matter what anybody's opinion is. But
Hmm.
what I noticed about your recipe books is like it's not just one. I saw at least three or four, I believe, of different recipes. But do you have plans to like make more volumes or like go into different kinds of vegan food, or are you sticking with just the Chicana vegan style?
So for now, I've just finished issue 4. So that's I'm kind of doing one a year. That's another great thing is it's your own pace.
Yeah,
And there's no one's holding you accountable but yourself. That can be a challenge too, right?
definitely.
But yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm definitely gonna keep it going. I still feel like it's in its early years as a project. But it could become other things. I put them online sometimes for that kind of accessibility. There's I don't know. It could definitely become other things. I have like my Instagram. I put recipes on there sometimes. I don't know. Maybe I'll get into doing more reels or something. I love watching people do that stuff. I don't. I know it's like a whole job, so that's where I haven't
Right.
haven't gotten too deep into that yet. But I've right now I'm loving the zine publication for the project. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's awesome because like at places like the Orange Show, where I believe you were vending there, you were able to sell your art and these recipes, in the same space, and that's just like to me is awesome because like the Orange Show in and of itself is just a great place here in Houston because it's kind of like an alternative space for artists to come share information and just kind of just be in the creative space, but with you traveling nationwide and doing solo exhibits and things like that, do you feel like concretely, like just with every show that you do you ever feel like more and more concretely confident in like your skill and like you're like, I got this. This is me. This is what I'm doing. Like what inspires you to do all these things?
Yeah, I think definitely like part of it is all of the I can't like ignore all of the like horrors happening in the world, I guess.
Right.
And like
Yeah.
how like I think part of it is like trying to stay grounded and like rooted and we need that. Like that's like a survival mechanism,
Yes.
in a lot of ways. I think like I don't know if that's inspiration, but that's like
Yeah.
I think like as artists, I think like folks don't give it's like I don't know if it's folks not giving artists enough credit or like I've been thinking a lot about how um artists, writers, right, any type healers, anyone, working in that like kind of creative mindset are it's not just that like we are undervalued and underpaid and all of those things, but it's that I think we're really feared because we are the creators of change and culture and like radical concepts that are being put out there just by way of like putting our voice and perspectives out there and like expressing them. And that can be really, terrifying by folks in power, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, we're just by us being like, hey, here's how it is. And we're trying to like make the world a better place. Like, you
Like,
know?
sorry if it, sorry if it intervenes with your hate, but we're gonna continue to shed light on the world.
Yeah. So, sometimes just putting things out there that are, questioning the status quo, even if you're not trying to stir it up, even if you're just being yourself and, that like existence is resistance type of idea,
Yes.
like that is, I don't know. Maybe I escaped your question a little bit, but I think that it's not like along those lines of like, you know, community is inspiring. The earth inspires me. Walking outside, plants, people that I love, um, uh, like all of the warm fuzzy stuff, all of the good stuff, and then like all of the horrible stuff too, because it's like we need to counter that with like beauty and healing and compassion, right? So something like that, I think, is my answer.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely get that because it's almost like you're inspired to live more fiercely because of all the chaos in the world. And that chaos is, for me personally, I feel like it's always been there. It's just more at the forefront now in modern days where
Yeah.
we're able to see what's happening across the world just by going on Facebook or Instagram and just seeing that destruction. And yeah, definitely, I agree that like combating that with light and bringing in, whatever goodness that you can or knowledge of understanding of a better way. I think that's great. That's awesome. But do you feel within yourself like because we all have a healing journey, of some sort, whether it's, you know, everyday life or past traumas or things like that.
Mhm.
But do you feel like with all this work that you do with just being an artist or writer and being in community with people that are like minded, do you feel that that has contributed to your healing journey?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I don't think it you can't do it alone, you know, and like we truly need each other to lean on like in the hard times, but like just to like have joy with in the good times, you know, and
Yeah.
to like work with and organize with and to like uplift one another and like, you know, that's what zines and zine fest are is like we want to uplift each other and be like, hey, you're doing amazing things. Like, here's a space for you to do amazing things, you know, and like curation, like, curatorial activism and those kinds of concepts. And in making paintings, like I like painting portraits of people because they deserve it, and while
Yes.
they're alive, and
Mhm.
I think a lot of portraits we see like in murals or in museums are of people who are no longer alive, and like you deserve like your flowers now because you're amazing, and like that kind of
Yes.
thing. Yeah, I just want people to know that. That, like, I see you and you're doing great. So,
Yeah, definitely. I know for sure. Like you made a real impact on my friend Mango, just simply because of your love for animals. You know, they themselves are an environmental activist as well, and they just want to. I met when I met them, they kind of it was the same way of when I met you, just today is that I could feel and the resonance of that idea, of the idea of like, let's just be good to each other. It's really not that hard, like it's not that difficult to just say, okay, you know what? I'm just going to let go of this anger or hate or discomfort or whatever and just be. I think that's really awesome, that you do that with not only with your art, but with your writing. And I would even say that all that you do is art, just writing, painting and all these different mediums that you carry that art and that idea throughout all of them, which is really great, and I think that the future holds so many more opportunities for you because you've already done, I first saw your paintings, and over here at the Post in Houston, and that when I saw it, I was like, this speaks to me, like it, like a reaching out. It was like a reaching out of touching other people's lives is what I got from that particular painting that I was looking at for a little while. But I took a picture of it and I was like, wow, this artist decided to take corn husks, that we make tamales with, and put it on a canvas and display it in a different way. But with that particular painting and that type of medium, what was the idea behind that specific medium?
yeah, well, thank you for all your kind words, Adriana. Yeah, I'm so glad you get to see that show. It was really cool to see that there's this new cultural arts org in Houston, Alma. But yeah, it is titled "Reaching," that one. But yeah, working with the cornhusk, I started doing that in grad school with actually it started with a sculpture where I was trying to make a life size cornhusk doll,
Oh,
and
cool.
so I made a few of those. Yeah, because we were making one like as kids, and so I was like, what if I made it, life size? Well, it's my size. It's like 5 feet tall. And it's like life size for some people. Yeah. So, and then like seeing, okay, what would it mean to paint with these? And for me, I was thinking a lot about materiality. And so, something that, like the whole decolonize your diet concept is like, where does your food come from? Where are the origins of like the particular things on your plate, right? So thinking about like squash versus like wheat or like maize versus wheat, right? Maize is like of the Americas or like Turtle Island or whatever we want to call this land, right? Wheat is from Europe, right? And it like came here, and that's the whole corn tortilla, flour tortilla. And that's just an easy one to go to,
Right.
right? And so I thought about like, okay, that's food, right? That's like decolonizing food. So how can I think about decolonizing art and like art materials? And so where do art materials come from? So there's, if you ever notice, if you ever talk about like oil painting, people go like, ooh, oil painting. And there's this like weird level of like there's this like class thing or something that happens. And
Yes.
why is that? Oil paint? Oil paint is from Europe. It's Eurocentric. And so it's
Mhm.
like, well, look at that. Interesting. So I kind of start analyzing these things and like so and but acrylic paint was invented in Mexico. And so but like Mexican muralists were some of the first folks like working with that. Um, and so to like think about that and be really and like intentional when I work with either of those and understanding like, okay, like as someone, like we can use the word mestizo or what, or just, mixed ancestry, whatever. Like I know that word is triggering for some folks, but so I call it mesticex media. This is like a term that I coined of like working with different materials of your ancestors. And so in and also understanding that like oil and water don't mix, right? And so like oil paint, acrylic paint, water-based paint, oil paint. So like all these things going through my head, like as I'm like analyzing this whole material thing. And then the corn husk, that's like indigenous, right? That is like that
Yes.
goes way back. Like that's like we are the corn. Like that goes, codices and like this is ancient medicine. This is like ancient and this is sacred. And so thinking about what happens if I just work with all of these things on one surface or one of these things on one surface, and like what does that add or take away from the meaning of this particular painting, and why, and and like all of those things. And so that's kind of how I got into thinking about working with the corn husks in work.
That's awesome. There's so many levels of meaning behind that. It's definitely clear to me now that you were talking about it, that that's definitely a decolonization, not only of art, but also of food, and just kind of picking it apart and really seeing the history of it and seeing what resonates with your roots here, like not only with standards of beauty that, is becoming more and more of a popular idea, but also decolonizing your way of parenting, your way of creating art, your way of making food, and to return back to those roots that have served us so well, that keep calling us, to come back to the roots, to build a better foundation for ourselves as a people, as a community. But do you have any like future plans of any new things that you're excited about or that you're going into?
So the series that I've been working on this last year is called Plant Cesters, and so I love it.
That's beautiful.
It's painting portraits of people based here in Yanaguana, San Anto, and people who are artists, activists, culture workers, people who I admire and am inspired by, and who inspire our community. And interview, like casually talking with them, right? Like as I'm like photographing them, about what plants they feel connected to. So for me, it was like mais. That's like what I'm using in a lot of my paintings. And then I started thinking like, well, what plants is like, or like everyone else into, or like, and why? Like, is it a cultural connection? Is it like, for many people, it's like it's like something they remember from their childhood or their grandmother, making tea with or cooking with, or it was in their backyard or something like that. It's like usually some tied to some kind of memory. And so
Mhm.
what I'll do, like what's become a cool part of my practice is like gardening and foraging and harvesting as a part of my painting practice. And so I'm like gathering plants all year after understanding what their plant ancestors are, their plants they're connected to,
Mhm.
and then dehydrating or pressing them. And then I end up embedding them in resin and then painting with oil paint their portrait on top of them. And so what you get are like layers of plants and paint and their portrait with like the plants kind of showing through. And so the kind of idea behind that is that um, somewhere down our lineage, somewhere down in our history, right? One of our ancestors probably was working with one of these plants that are for some reason connected to today. Like, I don't
Right.
think it's a coincidence, right? For,
Yeah.
for food, for medicine, for shelter, for clothing, like there's a reason we're drawn to these plants. There's a reason like these plants are like in our memory or in our family or something like that. And so that's the kind of the concept behind Plant Sisters and wanting to uplift those around me as well.
That's awesome. That's really beautiful because I really think that that kind of gets to the core of a person. Like, like when somebody asked me a question one time, they said, "What's your earliest memory?" And then digging into my memory, just thinking about all the memories that I have, but then thinking of the first one, kind of like it brought me back, it took me through my whole life and just to really, think and contemplate why I am the way that I am. So I'm sure that that's the same case with exploring that with plants, because for me personally, it's roses or aloe vera. It reminds me of my mom, of healing, of, having mosquito bites and always being outside and stuff like that. So I think that's really clever. That's so awesome that you have taken the time to like really create these beautiful ideas that are so unique, like uh, to get people back to their roots and kind of make them come back down to the ground level and get grounded and stay within that mentality, but it in doing that it can be really taxing sometimes, and especially with all the work that you do. I'm sure that there's days where you have just a little bit of time to do self-care routines and stuff like that, but what rejuvenates you? Like, is it just making art and things like that, or do you have like other routines that you kind of stick with?
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing your plant sisters. I love that, and now it makes me feel like there should be an interactive component where like visitors like to an exhibit can jot down theirs, and I don't know.
Oh
I love hearing that. So that was really cool.
yeah.
And Rose is so beautiful. Oh, love it. Yeah. Well, I try. Like, it's hard. I think that's one thing I'm trying to get better at for sure. Plant medicine, herbal plant medicine has been really good to me. I've through since things have become more virtual, I've gotten to take a lot of classes online. I took some herbalism classes with hood herbalism, and I'm taking some the curanderismo mentorship with Erika Buenaflor, who's an awesome author. So just like finding these online classes has been great and healing, and great way to also be in community with folks you never otherwise would be in, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it's like I think one thing is like every day, and I'm like saying it right now, and I haven't even had any tea today, but I'm like every day, as needed, as able, being like, what does my body need today? I've got like my bruja corner in the house, like my whole like shelves of herbs and teas and things.
Nice.
And so every day kind of that's kind of accumulated over time. Asking myself like, what do I need? Let's trying to listen to my body and my spirit and my mind, and ask like what plants would best serve me today, like just in a little cup of tea, easy quick thing to make for yourself, right? And
Right.
just like a little gift for yourself, so to it just helps to ground you. And I'm someone that gets like sleepy with tea, like no matter what, just because it's like a hot liquid. So that's like my like winding down at the end of the day type of thing.
Nice.
So like if I'm feeling like allergies or a headache or inflamed or whatever the particular thing is, feeling like what plant is going to best serve me on that particular day. And also like forces you to listen to your body and be conscious and aware of your body, like, oh, are like my limbs getting swollen, like do I
Yeah.
need like to take a tincture so I don't get sick, and like different things like that. So yeah, but also yeah, just being outside with the plants, playing with the dog, like those things that make you happy and make you smile. And I have a sticky note on my computer that says "Go outside," so I'm trying to remember that, not to
Yeah.
always just be like on the screen. But it can be hard these days.
Yeah, definitely. Just having those small reminders of little things that you can do to replenish your energy, like drinking tea or, playing with a dog. Definitely, I definitely play with a lot of dogs. Like,
Yeah.
I usually, any dog that passes me, I'm like, hey, what's up, buddy? You
Yes.
know, like, I just can't help it, because they have this beautiful way of like reciprocating your energy, which they dogs, they don't speak English, they don't have a language, and they're so authentic. They're just like babies. I feel, they're always going to tell you how they feel, what they need to do, but they're always there for you. So
Yeah.
it's kind of nice that
Yeah.
you're able to do that and still at the same time cultivate community and do all this work that you do. And I know you have an Etsy shop, right?
Yes, yeah, I do. So, all the paintings I make, I try to make prints of all of them that are accessible, just like $10 prints. That yeah, I have them at events that I table at, and then on Etsy for folks that are not local to where I'm at. So yeah, thank you for shouting out.
Yeah, definitely. So if anybody's interested, you're more than welcome to visit uh, Suzy's Etsy shop, which is Suzy G Art on Etsy.com. And just take a look around, see what you can find, and maybe get inspired by something. And also, if you want to contact Suzy via email, you're more than welcome at Suzy@SuzyGonzalez.com for maybe any new opportunities or resources, or maybe just questions that you might have about Xicana Vegan. So thank you so much, Suzy, for just all the information that you've provided to us, and just all the work that you do within the communities to help people, elevate people, and take them to a different mindset. But yeah, definitely. Do you have any upcoming events that you're going to be doing, either just anywhere in the U.S.?
Yeah, I have a public art project coming up, but haven't really announced it quite yet. So just, keep
Okay.
an eye out for the announcement, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Keep an eye out.
but yeah, no, I'm getting back to teaching, which is good for me, and I'm excited to get back to the students. So I'll be teaching. But yeah, thank you so much, Adriana, for having me. This has been a lot of fun. Yeah, thanks for the conversation.
Yeah, no problem. Hopefully we can get in contact soon and maybe be in the same city.
Yes, yeah, let me know. Hit me up.
Yeah, for sure. All right, cool.